talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past.
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It's Wednesday night, which means it's retro night, so it's good evening to George, to Steve, and to Steve Hasty, to Mitch and to Stu. Good evening, lads.
Good evening, Steve. Hello, everybody.
As always, we allow the fans to pick the games. There was a little bit of controversy last week because we had to double check if we hadn't done Leicester already, but we hadn't, and there's some good games involved. And Tom Dixon, as always, he must get in dead early. Can we do Ipswich Town next week? So
no, Tom, we can't.
I said to the president, I said if anybody asks to do it, then that's what it. You know, the first one in, and he's been the first one in. So
got to wait till it started.
Ipswich Town next week, lads. Anyway, it's Leicester City today, and ultimately with Leicester City, there is one thing that stands out, and that is goals. Plenty of goals, plenty of games, plenty of big games, plenty of memories, and it's up to the lads to share them with us. As always, we've got our regular features, celebrity fans, players that played for both clubs, and as long as I don't forget, the lads have to pick an 11 made up of those players that played for both clubs. So without further ado, George, we'll go straight to you for your first memory about Newcastle United versus Leicester City.
Thank you. Can I first of all tell you all, we've got a spectator tonight.
Oh, there she is.
Nice to see you, Marjorie.
Now, as long as she doesn't start booing you and throwing rotten fruit at you, George.
Well, that's possible. That's possible. Came home on Monday, so we're having a great time. We're doing fine. Right, go. Here we go. First one is a quite an old one. March 58, Saturday the 15th of March, and it's a 5-3. Another one of the big goal matches, and I picked it because it happens to highlight one or two, heroes is the best word to use of mine, like Len White, for example, at centre forward. How Len White didn't play for England, I don't know, but however he didn't. But in this match, it was 5-3. He scored a hat-trick, and a man called Arthur Bottom scored the other two. Now, Arthur Bottom was a short hero because he wasn't with Newcastle long. Arthur Bottom was another player that Newcastle bought far too late in his career. He was brilliant with York City, and for some reason, Newcastle United didn't notice him until they nearly beat Winners football, an FA Cup final at the Joker Park, and then they decided to sign him. But Arthur was on his way down then, but he had a couple of good seasons with this particular match. He was very, very good in that and scored 2 goals. Len White's hat-trick, well, just epitomised Len White. Two long runs from the halfway line where nobody touched him, and he slotted it in the bottom corner. And the third one was a typical Len White header. Not a very big man, but he was dynamite in the air. He seemed to float in the air and hang there and get his head to the ball, and his third goal was a header. And looking down the team that day, there's some interesting names. Stuart Mitchell was the goalkeeper that never was. He kept getting into the team, but he never lasted very long. Bill McKinney, a good local right back, with another right back whose career was ended with a knee injury, would you believe? Alf McMichael, Jimmy Schooler, Bob Stoko, Albert Franks. I don't know if any of you lads remember Albert Franks. Very stylish halfback, but that's all he was. He was all style and no substance. As soon as he got his knees wrapped, his ankles wrapped or his shins wrapped, that was the end of Albert Franks. And of course, the opposition knew it and made sure that he got them wrapped early on. Gordon Hughes, interesting character, somebody who played part-time football as well as working down the pit. I mean, I never understood that with Gordon. He kept his job down the pit as well as playing for the Magpies until very late in his career. And then eventually he went full-time. Sorry, I can't understand it because he was making about twice as much money down the pit as the first team players were in the first team. I mean, I recall at 58, that was a time when I was starting to play myself. And if I played for the A team or the B team and I got expenses and I added the salary I got from the university for my apprenticeship, I was getting nearly half as much as first team players were. So the incentive to be full time wasn't quite as attractive as it is now. And Gordon Hughes kept his job at the pit for quite a long time. And eventually, of course, he moved on. Arthur Bottom playing next to Gordon Hughes. Big, bustling lad with a hell of a shot. Not much guile about Arthur. He really was just a blockbuster. And Len White, of course. And then inside left, where I call inside left, a young man called George Eastham, who was about to turn the football world upside down. Now, my only memory of George Eastham when I was at the club was on one occasion I was asked to go on the bus with the reserves, and we're going to Stoke. I think, we're going to Stoke, and George Eastham was on the bus as well. And he came on and he brought his girlfriend. And I've got to say, Norman Smith was looking after the team. He was very impolite to this young lady and told her to get off the bus in no uncertain terms. And within minutes, George Eastham was in tears. So he was off the bus as well, and off we went away without him and his girlfriend. And on the left wing, of course, was Bobby Mitchell, who was outstanding. Leicester had some good players at the time, some good internationals, though. A lad called Riley, McNeil, Walsh, and Morris were all current internationals and good footballers. It was a very good football match, as 5-3 suggests, and 33,800 at the match. Not a huge crowd, but a crowd that appreciated the football. And as I say, with White setting it alight with his hat-trick and Arthur Bottom rounding it off with his 2 goals. So that's my first memory of Leicester City.
Thanks, George. Brilliant. Steve Wilkinson, good evening.
Yes.
Your first memory, mate?
Hi, everybody. I'm going to mention a game that's already been mentioned a couple of times on the comments, and it is that goal, Super Max goal. August 75, Gordon Lee manager at the time, and the game ended 3-0. It was in August, and the game, Malcolm McDonald put us ahead in about 4 minutes, and in the second half, Mickey Burns made it 3-0 in the 70 minutes. But it's what happened in between that is one of the most memorable things that only people who were there in the crowd of just over 36,000 saw, because there's no footage at all, and there was no shots used to be on in those days. If you remember, I don't know whether they still had the camera in the corner. They used to have it above the turnstiles in the corner. But and by that time, Kenneth Wilsonholme was commentating. But for some reason, and I've researched, there must have been something using the cameras that week. Tyne's probably only had one set. And that weekend, they showed Yorkshire Television's match. So they didn't show Newcastle. There was no coverage at all. So there's no footage at all. You can't go anywhere and see one of the most fantastic goals you've ever seen at St James's Park. Certainly Supermac, I think he was talking about it a few weeks ago, Steve, with on your show with Gibbo, and said I think it's his favourite goal. My seat at that time was in the East Stand, in the second row of the East Stand, about level with about the centre circle, just inside the centre circle in the Leazes half. And it happened right in front of me where the move started. I think it was either a corner or certainly attack from Leicester in the Gallagher end. Irvin Natris broke up the right side and he got just over the halfway line. He was probably about 5 yards to 10 yards inside the Leazes half. And he put a ball across the pitch. I think Super Mac must have shouted for it because he was going at his usual pace. It's not recalled mention. Malcolm didn't mention this, but I think Mickey Burns jumped over it. I cannot quite remember, but I seem to remember Mickey Burns jumping over the ball as if Super Mac had called for it. And he hit the ball perfectly with his right foot from, I think I could go onto the pitch and stand in the spot where he hit it from. It was about 35 yards out. And it shot up to the other end where Mark Wallington was in goal at Leicester. It probably got no more than about 5 feet off the ground. It just went like a bullet. Mark Wallington didn't even move. And it was one of those incidents where the crowd was just stunned it was one of those things that it just seemed to be silence for seconds because you couldn't believe that the power that he hit it with. And then obviously everything went berserk when he'd seen this fantastic goal that Supermax scored. That's I think he calls it his greatest goal. And it was just something to, you for a long time until getting into the sort of goals that Shearer scored against Villa and Everton. It was my favourite goal I ever seen at St James's Park, and it's still remembered now. And that was the team that won 3-0 that day. So we're up to 11 goals already after me and George. So that was my first game. Sort of Mac's greatest goal.
Brilliant stuff, Steve. Great stuff. Great memories. And if you had to be there to see it.
36,000.
Fantastic. One of those moments. Steve Hasty, you're too young to remember that, surely.
I was there. I just remember. I wasn't going to talk about the game. Well, I was going to talk about this particular game, but when I heard Steve was going to do it, I thought I'll give it a mention, but for a totally different reason. But it was an absolutely fantastic goal, unbelievable, and it was that, as you say, Steve, that period of shock and silence when he hit the back of the net before you realise it actually hit the back of the net, because he hit it so true with his right, absolute flew. It was power. It was unbelievable. But the reason I picked the game was that there was somebody passed away last week for Frank Worthing. Frank Worthing was playing in that game, I'm pretty sure. If it's not that game, it's the season after, but I'm pretty sure it was the same game.
It was playing that game, definitely.
Yeah, in those days, the players, Newcastle players, went to the Leazes end to warm up, and the away fat players came to the Gallagher end where I was standing. And they usually, they got the usual sort of reception from the Gallagher end as you can imagine, especially in those days as well. The warm ups were pretty routine, and it was always the centre forward. And he would be just doing tap shots to the goalkeeper, and the goalkeeper would be like not diving, but he was catching them, and they would go high, go low. And it was Frankie Worthing. So as Frank walked out and he gets into the box, the goalkeeper's already had the usual sort of round of applause, followed by the whoa, like sort of bother that you give them. And then people spotted it was Frank Worthing, and it was at this point that the entire Gallagher end came up with, obviously, the very famous iteration of Frankie Worthington. And they started to sing it. So he looked at the crowd, he just looked at it all, and he just took the ball and he decided that he would just juggle with it. So for the entire 5-minute warm-up, he stood on the edge of the 6-yard box and he juggled the ball. Knee, feet, other foot, shoulder, did everything he could think of, bouncing off the shoulder, back onto the other shoulder. Oh, he did everything. The full repertoire of tricks that you would see the likes of Ronaldo and people like that try now. And then as it was going on, the crowd was singing more and more. And gradually it started to fade away as we started to watch him. And then right at the end, the referee blows the whistle to send the two captains up for the toss. And at which point, Frank just flicks the ball high into the crowd, and he just catches it on the back of his neck and then drops it again. At which point, everybody, the iteration song went, and it was a full-on Frankie Worthington from the Gallagher end, and everybody standing there absolutely applaud. And Frank being Frank, he booted the ball up in the air, he trapped it, and then he bowed to everybody as if, so flamboyant. And you don't get players like that anymore, the flamboyancy, and a huge miss. And I was very sad to hear. Obviously, he was ill for quite a while, and read some of the stories from the family. But it was quite sad when you hear players passing away who you remember as such flamboyant, skillful footballers. But obviously, the game was the Supermac game, but it also stuck in my memory for those that remembrance of Frank. So that was my first memory, Steve.
Great stuff, Steve. Great stuff.
Those skills hard to come by nowadays.
Yeah. You're right. Mitch, over to you, mate.
Well, I'm going to start with one of the bumper 5-4s, and the one in particular is 13th of January 1990. And it was Roy Aitken's debut as captain, and this, he's somebody that's I've been very lucky, as I've probably mentioned on a couple of the shows before, to get to know out here in Dubai, and he was sporting director of Al Ahly club not so long ago, and a nicer guy and a nicer gentleman you couldn't meet. He's the only person I've actually gone gooey over when I realised who was in the waiting room. Bearing in mind, I've had sheikhs and kings and Hollywood stars, names you would know, sitting in the waiting room to see us. And the only one I've ever gone starstruck over was Roy Aitken when I realised he was there. And Roy's such a lovely guy. Done so much out here for animal welfare as well, which is something I know he never really bangs a big drum about. But what a super guy, and my captain. And so, and this game lasts long in my memory because of the last 20 minutes. It was a proper end to end. This game could have been 7 apiece, quite easily 7 apiece. I don't think I've seen a game quite like it before or since, with so many open chances, so many good saves. Both keepers made great saves. I think it was Budgie was in goal for us. I forget who was in goal for them. We went 1-0 up through Mark McGee. Then a defensive error let them go 1-1. Then we even had the chance to miss a penalty. And can anybody guess who missed the penalty that day?
Mickey Quinn.
No. John
You're
Anderson
wrong.
missed. John Anderson missed the penalty that day.
Missed it. Wow.
I had to double check that. And if you go on to look at the footage on YouTube, John Anderson took the penalty. Don't know what was going on that day. Anyway, and then they took the lead through Steve Walsh, a name we'll probably talk about later, a well-known central defender of theirs. And Mickey Quinn levelled it up at half-time. In the second half, it just didn't stop. But then they went 4-2 up. I think McAllister and a young Kevin Campbell put them 4-2. And then the last 20 minutes was all Newcastle United. All of a sudden, they just woke up and battered them. I think it was McGee set up Gallagher for our third. Quinn equalised from a corner. And then 5-4 on the 88th, 89th minute. And it was Mark McGee with a cracking cross shot to the Gallagher. It was a proper, like two heavyweights just slugging it out. Just standing in the centre of the ring, just hoying punches at each other. Oh, and to take that as Roy Aitken's debut, what an introduction to a black and white shirt. The other interesting thing is that season they actually went to Leicester later that year and got beat 5-4 there.
I'd forgotten that.
It's mad how many times. I mean, how many goals these fixtures threw up, season after season after season. I've never known anything like. When I was sitting going back through everything, there was two things stood out. One, when I was looking at their players, how many players who become household names have come through Leicester along the way. In that team there was Gary McAllister, Kevin Campbell, and other names besides. And then the other thing is how many goals. I reckon in terms of fixtures, this must be one of our highest average goals per fixture. It's crazy, and it goes all the way back to the 50s.
Yeah, great stuff. I mean, great memories. I was at that game. Great.
It was mental.
Great days. Great
mental
days.
day.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Of course, we had the old "Feed the Bear" song, which of course he brought with him from Celtic, and that was the birth of the double hats. The Celtic Rangers between the Gallagher and the scoreboard and the half and half hats, etc. First time I'd ever seen one of them. Bizarre times. But yeah, great times, great memories. Stu, your first game.
Well, because I'm the youngest by far on the panel, I got first pick of the games. So
you didn't. You didn't. You got in it before everybody else. That's what you mean.
First pick, isn't it? If you're not fast, you're last, Steve. Fair enough. And I like the way Steve's put us all in age order as well.
That should be
Well, I was thinking about just a quiet game. And it'd be remiss of me not to mention it because I know it's Spenny's favourite game. The one that, if you speak to people, there was about 80 or 90,000 people there. And that's when we won 7-1 in the last game of the promotion season.
Yeah.
Someone mentioned Ned Kelly before there, but he's a great servant and the tireless work that he did for us. And he scored a hat-trick in the first half. I mean, I remember I was normally in the in the scoreboard, but that day I sat in the corner. And I say I sat in the corner because I was on the wall at the very back. I sat on the wall in the corner. So I had a fantastic view of the game. The player he's cuddling there is Andy Cole, as we all know who it was. We knew he just had this thing that he was going to become a fantastic number 9 for us. And it was like a passing of the guard, that game. That's the way I see it. For purist football, it was a fitting finish to a wonderful, wonderful season. Now, you can over-exaggerate, but halcyon football that year. And what it did is something that hasn't been done since, and probably not for a long time prior. It united the whole, not just Newcastle, but the conurbation of Tyneside and surrounding. Everyone was together, and we had the parade at the Civic Centre. I'm sure everyone went to that as well. So that in the celebrations in the big market after that, and one of my favourite Newcastle songs is for its simplicity, is the Andy Cole song, and that just reverberated constantly around the ground, around the town all night, and probably for days and weeks after, people were still singing it. It was absolutely. There was local lads of the team, the Clarkie was playing. And we had a manager. We knew it was the emergence of a team because we had a manager that believed in us and believed in the city, and we believed in him. And we all know what happened after that. But that game would have been 7-1. Cole got a hat-trick as well, and I think Bobby Lee scored the other one. It was, I think it was on TV as well, was it not?
It was,
on TV. Yeah. So more people got to see what we'd been witnessing all season, and it was just like, we're here now. It was a statement of intent towards the Premier League, and for that reason alone, I loved it. We were on the march.
Yeah, we were great memories, and again a game which I remember very, very clearly. Remember that day as well when they came round and did the tour around Newcastle in the bus. Lee Clark was absolutely hammered, dropped the trophy more than once. He's talked about it on this show. But great times.
It was 6-0 half time, wasn't it? Was it 6-0 half time?
Yeah, it was.
I think we thought it was going to be about 10 or something.
And of course,
I just say my throat is sore, not because of the cigarettes or the alcohol. I'm on water because I'm in Saudi Arabia and it's really dry. It's arid, so it's dry me throat out.
I wonder how many kids aged around about 28 had the lullaby of the Andy Cole song sang to them by their dad, trying to get them, because I know we did. I know my Rebecca, that's what she did. And incidentally, my wife shared a room in hospital with David Kelly's wife when they were both expecting at the Princess Mary, and we got to know David really, really well. And one of the lasting memories I have of after that game was David ringing up on the following Monday and saying, "What a party we had! What a party!" And that's literally all he could speak. He's still on a high on the Monday after the game when he rang us, because he used to ring it just to see how the Bens were getting on, And what a great guy, a great family. But that Andy Cole song, you're right, Stu. What a lullaby!
Yeah.
Good stuff, George. Back to you, mate, for your second match.
Well, the second one's November 2015, Saturday the 21st. And sadly, it's a 0-3 defeat. Again, a lot of goals, but unfortunately all against us. And the crowd of over 50,000, nearly 51,000 at the game. And the highlight for the game for me was that the crowd was full of expectation. I went expecting to see us turn over Leicester, Ranieri's Leicester, that were winning everything in sight all of a sudden. But another reason I picked it was he's a good example of how a man manager, somebody coming in and getting hold of a team that was nowhere, hadn't won anything, hadn't won a game, and then suddenly started to win and kept on winning and until eventually they got the title. And I just thought, what a contrast to what we're suffering at the moment, that ours hasn't got enough common sense to walk, even though he's got nothing left in his locker at all. However, 0-3. The other things that I wanted to mention about the match was the team: Rob Elliott, Jamad, Dummett, Tiote, Member, Vernon Nita, Wijnaldum, Sissoko, Mitrovic and Perez, well, that should have been a team to give Leicester a game, but unfortunately we didn't. And the reason we didn't was a little man called Vardy, who was really hot that night and gave it a real run around. However, more importantly, the other thing about Vardy was that was the night that Vardy was ready to break an important record to score 12 in 12 league games consecutively. And he did it against us, that one. And that always reminds me about all this nonsense about what Newcastle fans are and what they are and what they aren't. Well, what Newcastle fans are is football fans. And it was amazing to see when Vardy scored that goal around the ground, once it filtered through that he'd broken an important record, people giving him a standing ovation, which for any opposing player would be unusual. But an opposing player who really sunk us made it that special. And whose record did he break, of course? Alan Shearer's. Alan Shearer held the record of 11 goals in 11 games consecutively until Vardy scored that 12th one and took the record away. Later in the game, when he was substituted, he got another standing ovation from the crowd. I always think that game typifies for me the great knowledge there is in the Geordie fan base and their appreciation of all players who do well. Also, the other thing that stands out for me was that one of the outstanding players for Leicester that night was a fullback called Danny Simpson, who had not long left us. And he played his socks off that night for Leicester. But although it was a defeat, it was 51,000 crowd. But it was the appreciation of things about football, not just the football, that typified that match to me. So a defeat, but a one with lots of good memories.
Yep, good stuff. Steve Wilkinson, your second game?
Yeah, well, my second game's October 97. Another one full of goals. It was the 3-3 draw. It was the first season after Dalglish had sort of dismantled the Keegan's great team. Ferdinand had gone, Ginola had gone, all the other players had started to drift away. Shearer had got injured, if you might remember, at the beginning. So we're left with a sort of scratch team bolstered by some new recruits just because we'd got into the Champions League. So he got John Barnes in, he got Rush in. We'd also signed Tamuri Ketsbaya and a striker who was promising, a young striker called John Dol Thomason, who started like a house on fire in the friendly matches at the beginning of the season. He scored about 4 goals, and we thought, "Oh, this is great! This lad's going to come in." And he had a Joe Linton start of the season because he couldn't hit a barn door from. Although I think, if I remember, he should have scored after about 40 seconds in the first game. I think Sprilla put him through, and it was one of those. If it had gone in, he probably would have gone on to break all sorts of goal scoring records. But it was as time went on, it was one of those things that he'd get one eventually. It would bounce up his knee or his arse or whatever, and that's actually what happened in this game. So the way the game started is Ketsbaya had a great game in from midfield. A sort of Shelby lookalike, but could run. You know, that's the sort of thing you remember Ketsbaya, and it's certainly somebody who had a passion for the side, as he'll remember from when he kicked the back fence. The game started. Ketsbaya went forward and got brought down the penalty area, and John Barnes took the penalty and put us one ahead very early on in the game. But they seemed to dominate in the air for some reason, and they had a guy at that time who was causing havoc called Ian Marshall, and he scored a couple of goals, put Leicester ahead, and then just before half time, we got a corner attacking the Leazes end, got a corner in the east stand side of that. Ketsbaya put it in, header by Des Hamilton, and it was another one of the Dalglish's recruits, and it bounced off the arse of John Dol Thomason and went in for his first goal. So he knew nothing about it, but it was enough of a deflection to give him. And so went in at half time, 2s each. The second half started, and Leicester scored again through. I think it was Muzzy Izzet scored the next goal. Another header. We were getting torn apart in the air, or it was knocked on at least, and he might have volleyed it in. And so we're losing 3-2 as we're going in the last few minutes. Ketsbaya got the ball on the the right of the penalty area, put a cross to the back post, and steaming in from the left back position was John Beresford, who powered a header. Can you believe a header from John Beresford? So in the last minute, we pulled it back to 3s each. Another goal fest, another dramatic finish, and obviously it was great to get something out of a game. But you saw, John Dole Thomason, who he ended up season at the end of that season, he'd only scored 4, but then went on to Feyenoord, and I think the problem was he had been playing in a different position. It was a bit like the sort of story that we're hearing about Joe Linton, that we're not playing him in the right position. He played John Dole Thomason as an out and out striker, and I think he was somebody that preferred maybe the Almiron role to come through from deep. And when he went back to Feyenoord, he started bagging goals in. I think he went to Italy, and I think he scored loads of goals there as well. So another striker that came here and didn't make it and went on to better things elsewhere. Playing plenty of them.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
That's my second game.
Good stuff, Steve Hasty.
Right. My second game was the Leicester 4-3 game in February 97. Just to put it into context, this was the season that we'd beaten Man United 5-0 and then went to Leicester the following week and got beat 2-0. So this started a run of 4 wins out of 13 games, and really was the demise of Keegan. We lost Ferdinand through injury, then we lost Shearer through injury, and things just weren't clicking forward. And by the time Keegan went, okay, we'd had that amazing 7-1 win against Tottenham, but Kevin left. He felt as though he couldn't go any further, he said. And I think it was the 14th of January, Penny came in. Penny was given the role, Kenny Dalglish. So there we were, 1-0 up, 3 minutes gone. Robbie Elliott, of all people, going half-time. Kenny decides to give one of his Steve Bruce half-time pep talks. And next thing we know, we're 3-1 down. And you're thinking, what the hell? We were, you know what? We're on the floor and we were feeling sorry for ourselves after the way the results had previously gone, despite a couple of wins. But we had just been seeing our season basically disintegrate. We're still 6th top in the league by this point, by the way. But the depression was setting in. And there we were. And at that point, Alan Shearer suddenly clicked and produced a fighting display from what had been a shocking first 25 minutes of the second half. We suddenly got the rub of the green. We suddenly got and saw the quality of an Alan Shearer, and more importantly, the quality of a leader on the football pitch. And I think afterwards, obviously what happened was he scored with a shot, then we got a penalty. And then in the dying minutes, the 90th minute, so I haven't got the 3-3, the 90th minute, I think Rob Lee went down the right-hand side. We're at the Gallagher end, went down the right-hand side, and he stroked the ball across the 6-yard box, and Shearer was just coming in and just tapped it in to make it 4-3. And like I say, that was the sign where you had gone from completely dominating the half to absolutely fall apart, and then a talisman comes along and takes the game by the scruff of the neck and galvanizes a team and galvanizes a performance out of the rest of his teammates. And it was David Batty who turned around and said afterwards that he didn't know Alan could play like that. And obviously he hadn't been there very long. He didn't realise until that moment that what they had in Alan Shearer playing for Newcastle United. Obviously we'd had a sort of staccato start of the season. Then Alan had been injured with a groin injury, and then we came back in, and the results just hadn't been going our way. So that for me, I mean, you look at the team: Hislop, Watson, Elliott, Peacock, and Philip Albert at the centre. At the back four, you had Batty, Rob Lee, Gillespie, and Espria in your midfield. Then you had Shearer and Ferdinand up front. You had a subs bench of Ginola and Clark. You had Warren Barton, you had Peter Beardsley, and you had Pav. And that was some team, and that was some bench. And from that moment on, Kenny seemed to get the best out of them. And we ended up finishing that league in second place, which was remarkable when you think about it. You know, okay, we finished on 68 points. We finished at least, 7 points behind Man United, who basically walked away with the league towards the end. But we did it on goal difference. You know, we had a goal difference of 33. Arsenal had a goal difference of 32. Liverpool had a goal difference of 25, and we're all on 68 points. And that shows you that when you've got a top-class striker who can put the ball in the back of the net, his goals are worth quite frequently an extra point. And that extra point in terms of goal difference makes the difference between us getting into the Champions League and not. And by getting into the Champions League, we were lucky enough to see that game against Barcelona and have that season that we had in the Champions League the following year. And so it's all these little dobbers that fall into place. It's all the things that aren't happening now at Newcastle. But that rub of the green, that little bit of luck, and having quality players who will take responsibility on the football pitch. And that's what we got in that particular game. And that's why it stood out for me. And we'll beat Leicester. And quite honestly, they've never been one of my favourite teams. So that made it even more special.
Great stuff. Mitch, your next game, mate.
Before I start, Stu, did you get a message of Bobby by any chance through there? That was why I got the giggles.
Oh, just now. No, it's on his phone after I turned it off.
Apparently, he's seen the biggest pair of false breasts ever. And anybody oh dear me! Anybody who's watching who knows Bobby will understand. Such is life with a drunken Aberdonian as a friend. So the next a lovely guy you cannot meet, mind, by the way. 21st of May 1992. The game that kept us up, and the game that kind of started it all, really. The game that gave us the launch pad. Leicester City 1, Newcastle 2. We were still in danger of going down to the third tier of English football for the first time ever. We had to get a result of some sort. We had to secure a result. And the other thing that people forget was Leicester were going for runners-up. They weren't on the beach with their flip-flops on. They had something to play for as well. And that trip to Filbert Street was, as a supporter, quite tasty all day. All day there was an atmosphere. All day it was a tinderbox. It was interesting getting into the ground, and then even more interesting getting out of the ground and back to the coaches later. But that I digress. The game itself was tense. It was one of those games where you could see both teams knew they had something to play for. But as the first half went on, we came into the game quite well. I think it was Brock who had a deflection onto the bar. Kelly forced the keeper to make a good save, and it was one of those things you're thinking, "Oh God, it's going to be one of them days, isn't it?" You know. And then just as we were thinking that, there was a mix-up in the Leicester back four. Then in strolled Gavin Peacock, 1-0. Fantastic. Our atmosphere, amazing. Bouncing at our end. As ever, a little overspill onto the pitch and then getting everybody back in because we were still all caged in then as well. Second half just became even more tense. And I tell you the player who I think gets forgotten in this game quite easily because his record at Newcastle wasn't brilliant. Was Franz Carr. And Franz Carr that day was our out ball. His pace, his ability to run. I know he had all the pace of Alan Wells, the Olympic sprinter, but sadly at times he had all the ball control of Alan Wells, the Olympic sprinter as well. But that day, he was our out ball. Every time, out of Carr and away. And he had a blinding second half. Absolutely blinding second half. But then, just about to tick into injury time, and that big defender, Steve Walsh, equalises for Leicester. 1-1. Hearts sink. We don't know what's going on. We're asking everybody who's got radios in the away end what the other scores are. BBC Sport cannot keep up with what's going on because I think there was something something similar happening in the first division as well. So we were sort of like, I nearly said trannies there, but if you take a tranny into the ground these days, it's a different thing, I think. Anyway, so we really didn't know where we were at. Neither did the players, and neither did the manager. And so the Leicester players are on the pitch. The Leicester fans are on the pitch. It took about 2-3 minutes to get them off. Game kicks off again in the middle of pandemonium. And then almost out the blue, long ball forward. And it was one of those ones where about 5 or 6 players were converging on the same ball. Goalkeeper coming out, defenders running back, strikers running at it. And that man again, Steve Walsh, just poked a long leg out, which managed to toe poke it into the bottom corner of his own goal. 2-1. Cue massive pandemonium. Everybody on the pitch. Leicester fans on the pitch. Newcastle fans on the pitch. Leicester and Newcastle fans meeting each other and congratulating each other by shaking hands on the pitch. Chaos is the word. And we still didn't know where we were at. And I think we were at about overran by about 9 or 10 minutes in the end. And now, as it happens, we didn't know this at the time. The draw would have been okay with the draw, would have stayed up. But nobody knew that. And the way Keegan and McDermott got everybody's heads together when the game kicked off and just said, right, just give it one last push. And it paid off. And that was so typical Keegan. And then what grew out of that result was all in that spirit of just give it a go, give it your best, let's have a go. And that was the game that changed everything, really. Saved we from the drop, but then give we a platform to go on to doing some amazing things. And so that game had to get a mention today.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. Another one I was at. I've showed the ticket many times. I found it in the loft at the start of lockdown.
Can I just add a personal bit to that about that game?
Go for it, Steve.
I actually lived in Nuneaton at the time, which Leicester was almost my local club. A local Premier League club. Obviously, I still support Newcastle. But I tried all sorts of ways to get a ticket. I don't know, did they have loyalty points? I can't remember what they had for getting tickets, but there was very little chance of getting one out of Newcastle. So I tried to get one from Leicester. And one of the ways I tried was actually I wrote a letter to Gordon Lee, who had been there the year before. I put it on and I was a great fan and all that sort of stuff. He actually replied to say he'd been there Leicester the year before, caretaker manager at the finish. And in fact, that they'd just avoided relegation themselves. But anyway, he did reply saying that he couldn't help me to get one. So I ended up listening to it on Radio Leicester, which obviously was a biased commentary. With teletext, you didn't have internet or anything like that, so you had the scrolling teletext on the screen. So I was probably slightly more up to date than you, but there was 4 games that mattered. Plymouth and Tranmere and Ipswich and Port Vale were all playing at home. The teams, I think it was about 6 teams could have gone down, and I think at one stage we dropped a place. I think one of the games had turned around. So It was a tense, particularly the first half, as you say, until the goal just before half time. It was tense waiting for every time the teletext scrolled round. CFAX, the younger people don't even know what that is probably, but there was very little information you could get about what was going on. In the ground as well, because BBC, I'm sure something was happening in the first division as well that took more priority. Another relegation, thing, and so we were way behind what was going on compared to what you would normally be, because normally you get the lads in the ground who had that radios. There was a couple of them who were just like a teletext service themselves. They were like video printers, But we didn't have a clue. Didn't have a clue what was going on there.
Okay, over to you, Stu, for your final recollection.
Well, after basking in the glory of getting first pick, I was then thinking, what game shall I pick next? So I was going to do the 4-3, the cometh the hour, cometh the man, Alan Shearer, but then Steve took it. So I thought, right, I'll do the 5-4, and I was just thinking of what game. Mitch took it. So what am I going to do now? So when I was doing some research for Glen Roder earlier in the month, there was a game where we won 2-0, and we were 2-0 up after about 6 minutes. But I didn't want to do that one either, so I went on some website Kenny Wharton scored that goal that day as well. I went on the website and looked through the history. Yes, there was loads of goals and a few 3-1s, by the way. So there was loads of goals. But what stuck in my mind most was there was games. I'm sure we've all done it where we haven't been to a game and wish we had been to a game. And there was 2 games. If I could pick 10 games in my support Newcastle of games that I hadn't been to that I wish I had been to in my lifetime, 2 of them would have been against Leicester. One's the one that Mitch has just talked about there. The one that I don't think we can underplay the importance of that day. It's probably the most important league win we've had in post-war football of the club. The week before would just be Portsmouth, and I can still, to this now, still see David Kelly knocking the ball into the Gallagher end. But the 2-1 away, I wasn't as old as Mitch. I was only a young lad, so I wasn't able to go to the game. So I was having to listen to it on the radio, and you were at the ground, Mitch. I'm at home, and it was carnage. It was chaos there as well because they didn't know what was happening at other games, and you could just hear them. There was talking of pitch invasions, etc. So we all, like as I said, we all know what happened after that. We went on to, as Steve Wilkinson was talking about earlier, record-breaking runs. We did a record-breaking runs of winning games at the start of the following season. So that 2-1 to me was the catalyst of what we did become in that era. So I wish I'd been at that game. The other game was just a game in 1997. It was just a boring 0-0 game. And again, it was at Leicester. But this is when, after Tangle, Neil Lennon inexplicably stuck his forehead onto Alan Shearer's boot. And it was so uncalled for. It was unjust. And it was 1998. It must have been because there was a World Cup coming on. And Shearer was England captain, so I think it was France 98. It must have been early March 98 or something like that. And there was obviously all the London-based media. Shearer should be banned for life, and he should be in jail. He should be this. And there was about 6 or 7 different camera angles, which clearly showed like I'm booting him. Now, there was one where it looked like he got his foot tangled, and that's the one that played. But as rumour has it, Big Al said, if I get banned, I'm not going to play for England in the summer. So the FA just washed their hands of it and let it go. So just to see Neil Lennon get that in his head, I would have wanted a good beat of that game as well. I just thought I'd do some different games I hadn't been to rather than talk about games we had. That was 2 of them, both against Leicester.
Everybody remembers that incident. I mean, it was replayed so many times as well, wasn't it? And God knows what VAR would have made of that.
Oh God!
Still looking at it now.
Big shout out to the sponsors, as always. Great to speak to Gareth today from Spider VPN. They're going to be with us again in April, and they've been with us for the last couple of months, and happy to carry on, which is great stuff. And big shout out to them. They want to get involved with events and all sorts. So big shout out. I know he's always watching. Big shout out to Graham at Geordie Riss. Had a great chat with him yesterday as well. Premium guitar lessons for beginners and children. Guitar repairs and service and recording studio. Visit our website www.geordieriffs.co.uk and Facebook at Geordie Riffs Official. Follow their Instagram at Geordie Riffs. Also a big shout out to John at qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, and to John from Jab Signature, and they knock up all of our flyers and all of our posters. If you're a first time visitor at the channel, please subscribe. Hit the Newcastle Legends button down in the bottom right hand corner. It is free to subscribe. Hit the thumb up to like the video. It does help us. Please click share that to your social media, and join the comment section and chat with like-minded fans. We're also on Spotify, iTunes and your other podcast providers. So every week I always pick out some famous fans and some players that played for both clubs. I think we'll go for the players that played for both clubs first and foremost. So here's your first one, guys. Easy that.
Howie. Got his name written on it.
In fact, they're all easy, these.
Danny Simpson.
Danny Simpson, of course, who went on to win the Premier League when he left Newcastle. So that was a good move. Oh, that out of all of them, that really hurts when you see that. I don't know why. It's just one of the.
And in
you
the
see,
Villa shirt as well.
just when you see him in a different shirt, it really kills you.
David Kelly.
Dead Kelly.
Kelly.
David Kelly.
That Paul Kitson.
It is
Paul
Paul
Kitson.
Kitson.
With the tash. Is that
With
tash?
Tash.
Yeah.
And the last one,
Dabby's ass.
Nico
Nicholas.
Stabby's ass.
Nicholas Stabizas. Dead easy this
Right.
week. Dead easy.
Marjorie got us a lot of free things in a shop in Athens because of Nico Stabby's ass. I was wearing one of my shirts with a little badge there, and the bloke says, "Oh, you know Nico Stabby's ass." And before I could speak, she says, "Oh, he knows them all. You know, and everything 20% off. You know, I could have picked the job for 20% off." Just because she said I knew Nico Stabby's ass.
Three Amigos is 5 o'clock, 5:30. Sorry, on Friday. Gary, you're just asking the question there, so just thought I'd answer it before it gets lost. Right, celebrity fans always have a bit of fun with this one because you never know whether it's genuine or whether it's not genuine. But here we go.
David Icke.
Ooh,
David Icke.
David Icke. You can catch an interview with me and David Icke on the channel. Just have a look through the playlist and you will find it in there. But yeah, David Icke is a Leicester fan.
You interview with the people, Steve?
Humperdinck.
It's a bit bizarre, yeah. I don't know. I don't know. There seems to be a bit of a fuss about that this week, but never mind.
I'll have to catch up on that.
Humperdinck. Humperdinck.
Engelbert Humperdinck. At least he's got the shirt and the scarf on. Fair play, like he's obviously a big fan.
Oh, Nick Ferrari.
That's right. Nick Ferrari. Now, all of these guys are fans.
Shawadi Waddy or
Is
something.
that yellow?
It's funny you say Shawadi Waddy because I didn't pick Shawadi Waddy because only one of the band is Dave Barton. I think Dave Barton's a fan, but it's not. It's not
yellow.
Shawadi Waddy.
It's a Kasabian.
It's not
No.
Kasabian.
Yellow.
No, it's not.
It's not a yellow.
No.
3 lads in the forehead.
Actually, one of them looks like the guy who created Viz, doesn't he? He looks like Simon.
It
Looks a bit like it looks a bit like Simon Donald, John McEnroe, one of the Bee Gees, and
Elton John.
somebody from Lindisfarne.
John McEnroe.
Well, it's an English rock band, obviously, from Leicester. They were formed in 1966 and they disbanded when Sunderland won the cup in 73. But they did reform in 2013. There, I've never given you as much of a clue.
Didn't tell you.
They're called Family.
Family.
Oh, God. Aye.
Family.
Steve, have you
Like a family.
listened to them?
No.
No.
I think
Steve,
I might have seen them. I think at the City Hall or something like that.
Steve Hasty?
Maybe-
No.
Nah. Okay, well, there we go. That's one stump.
Oh,
Or Rusty Lee.
Rusty Lee, yes. Her laugh, dear me, oh.
Yeah.
however, she is somebody that wears that blue and white
She is.
on telly.
It's the next one.
Newsreader.
Julie Etchingham.
Julie Etchingham, well
Absolutely.
done. George, you always get you surprise me with your knowledge on these.
Oh,
Martin Johnson.
Martin Johnson.
Martin Johnson.
hell, it's not surprising Julie Etchingham though. Steve, she's on the bloody telly nearly every night.
That's Mark Selby, by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well done. Snooker player.
Yeah.
Got the flag.
Oh,
From
Sorry,
Corrie.
Roy
Roy.
Cropper.
It's Roy Cropper, but what's his name?
Do I get a bonus point if I tell
You
you?
can have 2 points.
David Nielsen.
David Nielsen, well done. The actor.
Wow.
I think this one will be difficult.
Basil Brush.
Basil.
Boom, boom.
Boom, boom.
Basil Brush, I would never have had him down as a Leicester fan. It's amazing what you find out, isn't it? You learn something new every day.
Oh,
Yeah. What's his name?
News sportsman reader. Oh,
He does the Saturday afternoon now, doesn't he? Grandstand.
Rishi, is it? No,
Football
it's not.
focus.
Anybody? You've got his job right, but there was a big clue with BBC Sport down there.
Is it Michal somebody?
Close.
Masham.
Close.
Basham.
Think of an old
Basham.
blues. Think of an old blues song for his first name. Bashan, yeah, that's his surname.
Masham. Yeah.
Manish Bashan.
Manish.
Manish
Manish.
Gary Lineker.
Gary Lineker.
Gary Lineker, yeah, and it was a player slipped through the net. Unfortunately, he must have loaded up late, but there you go. There's another one on the right hand side.
So Les
Ferdinand.
I forgot all about him playing for Leicester as well.
was with it.
Yeah, fantastic, great stuff. So that concludes tonight's picture board, if you like, and now it's for the teams. So George, we'll come to you first. We've gone in that order all night. So George, over to you for a team if you've got one.
I have, but I'm stuck for a goalkeeper. Did anybody get a goalkeeper?
Mike Cooper.
Good shout.
Okay.
Good
Can you
shout.
Good one.
You could take Pav as a trailist because he had a trail there as well.
At Leicester.
Yeah.
He must have played for them.
No, he never.
Danny,
One of his,
Did he play for
Danny,
You should only
Danny
do-
Simpson,
I went
Danny
straight to
Simpson
Butchie.
at right back. Van Arnholt at left back. Right side midfield, Ken Leake. Centre back, Nikos. On Howie at number 6. Keith Gillespie at number 7. David Kelly at number 8. Les Ferdinand at number 9. 10 was 11 was Nobby Solano, and come on, where was number 10? Oh yeah, Paul Kitson I put in at number 10 to finish the forward line, and then you could pick substitutes from any other lots. I mean, Steve Guppy. There was one name in there that I even played with. Charlie Mitten's eldest son, John Mitten, played for Leicester for a while. And again, a stylish player, John, but not up for the fight, I'm afraid. Once somebody got stuck in, John disappeared. Keith Robson was there. A lot of really good players. Jackie Sinclair was amongst them. And another centre forward who didn't get a lot of credit, but had one of the hardest shots in the game, Barry Thomas. Barry Thomas had a hell of a shot. So you could pick your subs out of that. And as manager, well, I was going to say Pearson because of his links with both clubs, but others will have other ideas. So that was my team and manager.
Good stuff, Steve Wilkinson.
Yeah, I think it's great how George picks it in the old 2-3-5 formation. You know, going back to when people knew where people were playing, and you could know how everybody was. Very difficult.
Anything pre-Steve Bruce, we knew what we were doing.
But it was very difficult to find a midfield. Actually, so it's a very. I think it's almost like a 5-0-5 formation I've got here. But anyway, I've got Mike Cooper in goal. Danny Simpson. I've gone for a sort of 4-3-3, but it's a very attacking 4-3-3. At the back, Danny Simpson, Steve Howie, Dabizas, and Patrick Van Holt. Midfield, Keith Gillespie, Oyezi Perez, and Nobby Solano. And up front, I've put Barry Thomas in. Barry Thomas played in the first game I ever went to, Newcastle back in 1962. Prolific goal scorer. He scored 48 goals in 73 games. Can you imagine that? 48 goals in 73 games. All right, it was second division, but that's a fantastic performance. And Barry Thomas, Les Ferdinand, and David Kelly up front. Jackie Sinclair sub, and management team. Although there weren't managers there, our coaching staff were involved with Leicester in the past. Steve Clements and Steve Agnew. So make them coaches, and without Bruce, they might be all right.
No.
Steve Hasty.
Well, if you were going to let us have Pav in goal because he had a trail there, then
I
it
will.
would be Pav. Are you going to let it?
Right, aye.
Okay, right. Well, I've got Pav in goal. I've got Simpson and Van Aardhout as my 2 fullbacks. I've got Howie and Dabizas as my 2 centre backs. I've got central midfield of Perez and Solano, and I've got Guppy and Gillespie playing wide, feeding Les Ferdinand and David Kelly. I double checked. One of the trialists I was going to go for that changed my mind was Fabrice Pancrat, but I gave him a miss. Ian Stewart, he had a trial there. There was no Fumaker. I couldn't believe Fumaker's never played there. You know, he's never had a look in. He's never gone shopping there or nothing. That amazed me on that massive list of last week. And no John Burridge. I didn't know whether to go for Pearson or Gary Megson as my manager, but I've gone up to date. I've gone with Pearson. And obviously I've binned Agnew and Clements.
No surprise. No surprise. Great stuff. Hey, it's a pretty good team, attacking wise anyway, some of the players who play. But both. Mitch, what about you?
Yeah, I went for a pretty attacking 4-3-3. Hooper in goal. I went with Nobby at right back, Dabizas, Howie and Simpson at left back. Gillespie, Perez and Franz Carr in midfield, just because you got to mention earlier tonight. Front line of David Kelly, Les Ferdinand and Carl Court, just simply because he's the source of one of my favourite Sir Bobby Robson stories.
Yeah.
And Nigel Pearson is the manager.
Great stuff. Last but by no means least, over to you, Stu.
Right, I went for 3-4-3, very attacking. If you're allowed again the last minute transfer, I'll put Pav in goal with great pleasure. And then back 3 of Danny Simpson, Steve Howie, Nikos Dabizas. The wingers, I had Franz Carr and Gillespie with Nobby and Perez in the middle. So imagine that midfield. And then up front, Les Ferdinand, David Kelly and Paul Kitson, because I thought Paul Kitson was underrated as an understudy for us. He did some young. So then Nigel Pearson was the only manager I could think of.
Brilliant.
That was my team.
Great stuff. Thoroughly enjoyed it tonight, lads. Good one listening. We are going to do Ipswich next week. Thanks to Tom for his suggestion.
Thanks, Tom.
Great suggestion. The lads were really happy when they heard.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you so much.
That. I'm back tomorrow night, 6 o'clock till 7, with Super Mac and Gibbo, and I will see the guys next week. Take care, lads, and I'll see Steve and Mitch on Friday. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look